Well, welcome back to the Dream Lab. We got our trusty journal that somehow magically appears with dreams. Not really, we put the dreams in here, but it's kind of fun looking into the journal and seeing what's there. You know, one of the things we don't talk about very often is the importance of journaling your dreams on the Dream Lab, because we're assuming if you're looking for a dream to be interpreted, you've remembered your dream, which means you've probably written it down at some point in time. But some of you that are watching this, you're not remembering dreams. And you've had that experience where you had a dream, you woke up, and you were like, that was an amazing dream. And a couple hours later, something happens. You're like, I had a dream. How did I forget that? I can't even remember what that dream was. How did I forget that dream? It was so amazing. I love how John Paul used to say, dreams are written in disappearing ink. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when I was a kid, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, to disappearing ink. You could write something and it would fill the page, but over a couple minutes, it would just fade out and there was nothing left. Now, I mean, depending on how hard you wrote, you could maybe see the impression of it there, but sometimes you couldn't tell at all what was written. And dreams often happen like that, where we'll have these dreams and they seem so profound, so impactful. But if we don't record them in some way, they just kind of fade. They just kind of fade away. And it's the way that God uses the revelation of dreams and how it lands on our spirit and the interaction between the spirit and the soul. One of the reasons God speaks to us in dreams is because our soul is asleep while we're sleeping, but our spirit is awake. And so we can't argue the way that we would normally argue when he tries to talk to us in other ways. We have our opinions. They're all kind of suspended so that he can just say what he wants to say. But because of that interaction and the soul not being as involved in God dreams, what happens is in those dreams is they don't land in our soul the same way. Our spirit has this profound experience, but we need to actually bring our soul into that experience to remember it. And one of the best way to do it is recounting our dreams and writing them down. So find a way to write them down. Get yourself a dream journal. We've got some dream journals that we have made available. The one that John Paul developed. We actually have a fun dream journal that we developed for kids. If you have kids that are dreaming, or you could just find yourself. I mean, like this one I got at a craft show. Just a nice leather journal that somebody had made, handmade this little journal. But most of the time I actually record my dreams right into my iPad, because I can then search everything that I need. I can search them by date. I can search them by topic, by keywords. I can find what I need, and I'm easily able to find patterns and themes. Find some way of recording your dreams. Now, let's take a look at this dream that we have that has been sent in. Now, this dream was sent in by Chaz Smith. And Chaz is one of our tribe members. So she sent this into the tribe portal, and we're going to see if we can interpret it here on the lab. She had this dream earlier this year. This dream, well, it's probably still this year, depending on when you're watching this. She had this dream in March of 2024. So depending on when you're actually watching this video, it might be this year or it might be a few years ago. We'll see how long this one lasts on the internet. So this is our dream. I believe I was looking for a building to move my business into. Now, she puts in parentheses that in waking life, she does not actually own a business. But in the dream, she had a business and she's looking for a new building. So she's looking for a building. Then I am watching in third person a team of 2 or 3 meteorologists or storm chasers as they're looking for a storm. I will refer to them as we, since I'm with them and watching them as well. So this is one of those fun things that'll sometimes happen in a dream. Like you're observing the dream, you're seeing the dream, but at the same time, you're actually in the dream. So you're experiencing it, but you're watching it at the same time. There's a reason for that. We'll talk about that when we get into the interpretation piece of it, but you definitely want to pay attention to that because there's meaning to that. There's a reason why God would do that with a dream. We find nearby on the sandy shore of a beach 3 very small tornadoes forming a triangle. So 3 tornadoes all together, and they're in the shape of a triangle. Then in the center of them, because they're spinning, a larger tornado spun up because of the growing speed. So in the middle of these 3, this larger one starts to spin, and then she describes how as it starts to spin, all 3, they get consumed into this larger tornado, absorbing the other 3. Then the next scene is I'm watching the storm chasers, in a small boat on the sea. The tornado has moved to the sea. Now, this doesn't actually happen in waking life for an extended duration, but it's what happens in this dream. And so they move out into the open water, and they're trying to get to an angle where they can see this large tornado and take a picture to show the public the scale of it, possibly to warn them what's coming. The tornado is so large that it is causing a raging sea, the likes of which I've only seen in apocalyptic style movies. The waves themselves are seemingly as large as the original 3 tornadoes. They're forming and crashing and thrashing so furiously that the small boat is being flipped upside down, doing flips in midair, but miraculously never sinking the small boat. Eventually, over the top of the largest wave, as they crash through the whitecap, they crest the wave. The dream ends here, but I saw the scene in the horizon that they were about to see. It was the largest tornado I'd ever seen. The pillar had to be at least 5 miles wide, but probably much, much larger, stretching to the sky, spinning at such a speed that I would not have considered possible even from an F5 tornado. It was multiple shades of gray, dark gray, and black, and the sky above was as black as clouds can be, and they undulated the same as a tornado. Then I woke up. All right, so starting out, looking for a new location for a business, and then following these storm chasers, being one of the storm chasers, and finding 3 small tornadoes on a beach that start a new tornado in the center of them, combine into that larger tornado that goes out into the sea, creating a raging sea and being lost in all of the waves and all of the stuff that's going on, but finally being able to make it to where they can see this thing. And it's this little thing has become a huge, huge tornado, over 5 miles wide, huge, and it's dark, it's black, it's scary, it's ominous. End of dream. So how would you interpret that? What are you going to title this one? What are you going to put as the focus? I mean, one of the things when you're asking the focus, where's the dreamer? Are they the center of activity? Are they observing? Or are they participating? This is an interesting one. Because when the dreamer is observing or participating, then whatever it is that they're observing or participating is the focus of the dream. Now, I'll give you a little bit of clue that will help you out. And we talk about this in the Understanding Dreams and Visions course that's on our online classroom. When you're looking at a dream, you always want to default to the people being the focus of the dream. Because the focus of the dream is who the message of the dream is for. And a tornado doesn't need a message from a dream. So give you a little bit of clue that will help you out when you're looking at this dream. Once you've got your focus, your sub-focus, your details, write out the meaning of the dream. And when you're ready, start this video again and we'll let you know what I got here on the lab. It's a little bit of a storm that we're dealing with here. What did you title this one? You call it the storm, call it tornado, storm chasers, something along those lines. whichever one you titled it, what did you come up with for the focus? Now, remember, we talk about for the focus, is the dreamer the center of all the activity? Is the dreamer part of all the activity, or is the dreamer observing all the activity? And this is one of those fun, interesting dreams where it's almost all three, because it starts out they're looking for a new building for their business, but then they're observing these storm chasers or meteorologists, but they're also part of them. So they're there, but they're also observing. So they're participating, but they're also observing. So a couple things that this lets you know. When you're participating, or when the dreamer is participating, then the meaning of the dream is something that is going to affect a group of people, because the group represents the group that they're participating in represents a group of people. And the dreamer is going to be affected by what happens in the dream. They're actually going to have, they're going to be part of it. It's going to affect them in some way. They're not the center of it. They're not the main one being affected, but they're going to be part of a group that is affected by it. When you're observing, it's not about you, but it's about an intercessory thing. You're being shown something that's going on so that you're going to be able to pray. So this has got a little bit of dynamic. This is going to affect the dreamer, but it's actually more about what they're seeing and what they're going to be recognizing than it is the effect in their lives, which is it's mainly observing, though it kind of feels like they're part of it at the same time. So here's your keys. So if I was going to put the focus of the dream, and this is a difficult one because you start out with the dreamer without the meteorologist, but then you end kind of the meteorologist, and it's almost like the dreamer's not there, but they're kind of there. I would put the dreamer in the center just because of that piece, but you also could put the storm chasers or the meteorologists in the center as the focus. Either way, you're going to have a little bit of difficulty with this because the first scene and the second scene. The first scene is about the dreamer looking for a new building for their business. Now, we're going to actually interpret this as two different dreams because it's a connection, but to be able to diagram them, it actually would make it easier to diagram them separately. So you've got the dreamer, you've got a business, you've got a new building. So dreamer being the focus, you've got the business being the sub-focus, and the new building being the detail. So in this, the business is what the dreamer is doing, staying busy. What's keeping them busy? That's what the business is. This could be ministry, this could be maybe their life. It's something that they're doing. Because of this dream, it really does feel like a ministry type of a thing. And a new building is just a new place that they're going to be doing for it. So this is talking about a transition in ministry, that they've been in ministry, but they've gone into a season of transition. That's the first dream. That leads us into the second part of the dream, because the second part of the dream tells what the transition is or what it's going to look like. So put that one aside. That's the meaning of the first scene. Now let's take a look at the second scene. The second scene I'd put as the focus, the storm chasers or the meteorologists, these 2 to 3 people. So you've got that as a focus. You've got the tornado as a sub-focus. You've got the sea as a sub-focus, and the boat could be a sub-focus or an important detail. You could go either direction. I'm just going to put it as a sub-focus because it doesn't hurt to have 3 sub-focuses, and there's some details specifically about the boat that's going to be helpful. So the first sub-focus is the tornado. Now, the tornado actually grows out of 2 or 3 other tornadoes. So I'm going to put 3 tornadoes as a detail off of the first tornado. So I know in the dream, you see the 3 tornadoes first and then the other. So we'll remember that in the interpretation. But for the diagram, that's more of a detail, because what's more important is this big tornado. And another detail that would be off of this tornado is beach, because it starts on the beach. And then the next detail is that it moves out to sea. So then the sea, so I would actually just put an arrow from tornado. I like putting it's some type of a connection. So on the screen, you'll see like a little arrow that's going from tornado down to sea. And that'll let us know that the tornado moved out to sea. So now let's take a look at the sea. On the sea, you've got these huge waves and you've got a storm. Well, the dreamer said that they've never seen anything like it other than like apocalyptic style movies. Like these are huge, intense, major waves, major issues. All right, so that's really our only detail about the sea. The second one is the boat. Third one, our third subfocus is the boat. Now the boat is being tossed by the sea. So you could put tossed, flipped, whatever words you want to use to talk about that whole dynamic. They were being flipped. But one of the things that's important, and whether you put this as a detail or whether you remember this, is it doesn't actually hurt the boat. It's being tossed, but they always are fine. They always make it. So that's one of the key things. And then the dream ends, and you could put this maybe as a detail back under the tornado, as seeing this tornado, and it's 5 miles wide, and it's extremely strong. So huge. I mean, and 5 miles, don't make too much of 5 miles, because the dreamer said at least 5 miles, probably bigger. So it's not about 5. So 5 is not important for your interpretation. Because if it was, then it would have been something like the dreamer would say, and I knew it was 5 miles wide. That's when you would actually give importance to the 5. But because they said it was at least 5 miles wide, probably bigger, it's not about the 5. That's just their mind trying to give some context to how huge this thing is. It's more important that it's huge, it's wide, and it's strong. Right? It's wide in its breadth, and it's strong in its rotation. That's the important things that are here. All right, so now what would this be talking about? In thinking about this maybe being a spiritual situation, let's take a look at some of these subfocuses. What might they mean? Then we'll come back to look at the meteorologists, because we'll keep that for the end. Storm chasers, meteorologists, we'll figure that piece, because it'll make a little bit more sense once we figure out some of these subfocuses. So the first subfocus is a tornado. Now, what could a tornado mean? Now, this is not a good tornado. Remember, it talked about how dark it was, how black it was, how destructive it was. So this is a negative thing. And it starts small, because it talked about those 3 small tornadoes that, because the 3 of them were there, it created something bigger. The first 3, they weren't like a real tornado. They're more like like a whirlwind or something. But the dreamer mentioned, like, tornadoes aren't this small. Like they don't do that. It doesn't make sense. But they became something bigger. So tornadoes talk about some type of situation, circumstance that messes everything up. Now, it can be a whirlwind that pulls things into heaven, or it could be a destructive tornado, a destructive circumstance that destroys things on the earth. When it's negative, it's a destructive circumstance. So this is a destructive circumstance, and it comes out of 3 smaller things. 3 smaller things that become a bigger thing and grows to having worldwide impact. Now, why do I say worldwide impact? The sea. It went out to sea. So it starts on the sea. It starts on the land. It starts just impacting a small group of people, but it ends up affecting the whole world. The sea, in the book of Revelation, the sea represents the sea of humanity. It's talking about the peoples of the world. So this is a much larger dynamic, a much larger situation that's going on here. And it's creating havoc. It's creating upheaval in the world systems. So 3 seemingly small things that combine to create something much bigger. Now, notice at first they were not attached to the sky, which means that at first these are just natural circumstances that combine, but then by the end, they're actually being touched by the sky, the black sky. So now there's a heavenly influence in this destructive situation that is creating upheaval on the world system. Now that's, you actually could just leave it right there and you've got enough of the dream to understand. If you got the fact that the dreamer is recognizing an extremely difficult situation that's going to affect the world, you've gotten it. It has a spiritual component to it, but it didn't start as a spiritual situation. Now, that you've got some added bonus. Now that we kind of get some of those feels, we got what those different pieces might mean. Let's go back to the meteorologists or the storm chasers. So what is that about? People that are looking for what's going on in the world. People that are looking at the situation. Is this a group of intercessors that are looking, trying to figure out what's going on, what needs prayer? Is it a group of prophetic people that are looking? Clearly, there's a call for intercession because the dreamer is recognizing something bigger than themselves. They're being shown something bigger than themselves, but it's not just about them, and they're not even going to be the lead in it. But part of a group that they're a part of. They're kind of observing, so they're kind of outside of it, but they're kind of connected to it. That is going to be the ones that are seeing this and recognizing the extent of the potential damage that this is going to cause. So this is a call to intercede. That they're seeing that their ministry has changed. It used to be one thing, but they've recognized the transition. And part of that transition is to be a part of a group of people that are going to recognize the circumstances in the world and be able to chase them down to see the extent of what they're going to cause and the source of what they cause. And in the midst of all the upheaval, the Lord's going to be protecting them from the things, from the environment that they're in. But they're going to get to the point where they're able to see how big the situations that they're facing are. Couple different things. Black, dark. When you look at this dream, there's not a lot of light, there's not a lot of hope. So this is not saying that this is what God is doing necessarily. This means that this is a circumstance or a situation that's going on, which is a major clue that it probably can be averted through prayer, that it probably can be ended through prayer. Now, I actually don't feel like this is a false dream. The difference between a false dream and a dark dream. A false dream is the enemy just lying and there's nothing actually there. He's just trying to create fear. A dark dream is where we start to see what the enemy is planning, what the enemy is doing. This feels more like a dark dream. It starts out kind of like a prophetic dream where the Lord is showing the transition, but part of the transition is seeing into what the enemy is doing. So a dark dream is seeing what the enemy is doing. When you have a dark dream, do not allow fatalism to enter in, because fatalism it's just going to be awful. It's going to be huge. It's the biggest storm that ever was. I've never seen anything like it. It's like the end of the world. Like it can develop that kind of mentality, which would play right into the enemy's hand. God's not going to show us something so that we can fall into fatality. It's so that we can go with hope and ask God to move. When you have an observing dream, when you're seeing something, it's for the purpose of intercession. And what you're seeing in this dream is not a good thing, which means you're praying against it, not for it. You're praying against it. You're asking God to break it up. He can break it up when it's three little tornadoes, because if those three things don't come together, the tornado doesn't start. So I would begin to pray that these three different smaller circumstances get dealt with before they become something bigger. Because if they get dealt with before they become something bigger, then all of a sudden, all this upheaval that affects the world doesn't happen. So the enemy has big plans, but God has better plans. And so let's pray his plans. That's the call of this dream. That's the purpose of this dream. What did you get out of it? What pieces did you see when you were going through your sub focuses and your details? Did you get the same meaning? Did you get that same basic understanding? Remember the basic point. You're being shown something destructive that's going to affect a lot of people. That's the basic meaning of the dream. If you got that much, you've got the dream interpretation right. But you can go a little bit deeper. You can go a little bit further and tease it out a little bit more. And our hope with these dream labs is to help you grow so that you can do that more regularly. You can go a little bit deeper. You can go a little bit further, and you can help the people that you're ministering to and help yourself when it's your dream go further than what you have been able to so far. So thanks for joining me on this Dream Lab, and I look forward to the next one. Until then, keep dreaming.